The silver-hulled Confederate vessel descended through Earth's atmosphere with theatrical precision, landing on the specially constructed platform at the United Nations spaceport in Geneva. Crowds gathered behind barriers, faces upturned in wonder and hope. Humanity's first official diplomatic reception for their galactic neighbors was broadcast to over 12 billion people across Earth and its orbital habitats. Ambassador Elena Chen stood at the forefront of the welcoming committee, her ceremonial blue uniform pristine, rehearsed words of greeting ready on her lips. At 43, she represented the best of humanity. Brilliant, compassionate, and optimistic. When the ship's ramp extended with a pneumatic hiss, she stepped forward with practiced dignity. The Keitel delegation emerged, towering figures with iridescent exoskeletons and multiple compound eyes that seemed to assess everything simultaneously. Their lead diplomat, Supreme Arbiter Kazarek, barely acknowledged Chen's elaborate greeting before presenting a data crystal. The terms of your species' incorporation into the Confederacy, the alien announced through its translator. Your immediate compliance is expected. 3 months later, Elena sat in a sterile waiting chamber on Proxima Station, Earth's newly established diplomatic outpost. For the 6th time that week, her appointment with the Resource Allocation Committee had been administratively delayed. "They're not going to see you," said Colonel Marcus Reed, leaning against the viewport that showed Earth as a distant blue marble. His military uniform bore the new mandatory Confederate insignia, a symbol of humanity's subordinate status. At 50, Reed's weathered face carried the weight of 20 years in Earth's combined military forces. "They haven't seen you the last 12 times either." "I have to try." "Marcus," Elena replied, reviewing her presentation on rare earth mining quotas. "The extraction rates they're demanding would devastate entire regions. There are protocols." "Protocols that don't apply to us," Reed interrupted, his voice low to avoid the omnipresent monitoring systems. "We're classified as a Category 4 civilization, barely above pre-spaceflight primitives." Outside the viewport, a massive Confederate mining vessel entered orbit, its extraction arms extending like predatory appendages. It was the 12th such ship this month. "We were so eager to join them," Elena whispered, watching the vessel position itself over Southeast Asia. "We thought we were joining a community of equals." Reed's hand rested briefly on her shoulder. "They saw our eagerness as weakness, our diplomatic overtures as submission." A chime indicated Elena's appointment had been canceled altogether. On her terminal, a notification appeared. The committee had approved additional extraction rights without consultation. "I'll appeal to the High Council," she said, already knowing it was futile. Reed watched the mining ship begin its atmospheric descent. "While you plead with them using their rules, they're stripping our planet bare. You know what they call us behind closed doors? The supplicants. Because all we do is beg." Elena's tablet displayed new directives. Human populations in extraction zones would be relocated within 30 days. Non-compliance would result in administrative action. "Keep trying your way," Reed said, turning to leave. "But some of us are starting to think it's time humanity learned a different language than pleading." As Elena gathered her rejected proposals, the shadow of the mining vessel darkened the viewport, eclipsing her view of Earth. 5 years of diplomatic failures had hollowed Elena Chen's once vibrant eyes. She stood before the United Nations Security Council, her posture rigid despite her exhaustion. The chamber was eerily silent as projections displayed the text of the newly passed Terran Resource Allocation Act. "The Confederacy no longer even pretends to recognize our sovereignty," Elena said, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "This legislation classifies Earth as a critical resource zone rather than a member world. It authorizes unlimited extraction without compensation or environmental safeguards." Secretary General Okonkwo rubbed his temples. "And our appeals?" "Summarily dismissed," Elena replied. "The ex-IFTL representative informed me that Earth's concerns are infrastructurally irrelevant to galactic stability." Colonel Reed, now gray at the temples, activated his own presentation. Satellite imagery showed massive excavation operations across Brazil, Congo, and Indonesia. While Ambassador Chen fought the diplomatic battle, the Confederacy has established 27 new extraction sites. Reed said, "Their techniques are brutal, efficient, and ignore all previously agreed-upon boundaries." The chamber doors burst open. A junior aide rushed in, face ashen. "Rio," she gasped. "It's happening now." The wall screen switched to live feeds from Rio de Janeiro. Thousands of protesters had formed a human chain around the perimeter of the newest extraction site. Confederate mining equipment towered over them, dormant but menacing. Then the Sci-Fi peacekeepers arrived. What happened next would later be called the Rio Massacre. The Sci-Fi used sonic weapons designed for their physiology, but catastrophic to human bodies. The protesters' organs ruptured. Blood vessels burst. Those who tried to flee were herded back with precision force fields. The Security Council watched in horror as 3,000 civilians were systematically eliminated in 19 minutes. "My God," whispered Okonkwo. The feed cut to a Confederate spokesperson, multifaceted eyes gleaming under studio lights. "Regrettable but necessary pacification of violent extremists threatening critical resource infrastructure," the alien announced. "The Confederacy appreciates Earth's continued cooperation." 3 days later, Alina Chen returned from an emergency session at the Galactic capital. Her shuttle landed at the Geneva spaceport where Colonel Reed waited alone on the tarmac. They applauded. Alina said as she descended the ramp, her voice hollow. "When I arrived to protest, the Confederate Assembly was commending the efficient handling of the Rio situation." Reed studied her face. "And now? Now I understand what you've been saying for 5 years." Alina's diplomatic facade cracked, revealing raw fury beneath. "They see our words as meaningless noise, our protests as the buzzing of insects." In silence, they walked to a waiting vehicle. As it pulled away, Alina spoke again. "The Secretary General has authorized your proposal. The Himalayan facility is yours." Reed nodded grimly. "Who else knows?" "A select group. Former rivals mostly. Chinese quantum physicists, American weapons specialists, Russian strategists, Indian system engineers. All people with reasons to hate the Confederacy. And you." Alina stared out at Geneva Lake, watching a Confederate shuttle cut across the sky. "I'll continue being their perfect, pleading ambassador." Her hand gripped the armrest until her knuckles whitened. "It will make a useful distraction while you build what we need." "And what is that, exactly?" Reed asked, though he already knew. Alina turned to him. 5 years of diplomatic humiliation crystallized into cold purpose. The means to make them fear us. The subterranean Himalayan facility sprawled beneath 3 kilometers of rock, its existence unknown to all but a select few. Officially designated Deep Earth Resource Assessment Center, it appeared in Confederate records as a minor geological survey station. In reality, Project Phantom had become humanity's most closely guarded secret. Dr. Amara Okafor hunched over a dissected piece of Confederate technology, her dark eyes narrowed in concentration. At 36, the Nigerian xenobiologist had already revolutionized humanity's understanding of alien physiology. Now she was pursuing something far more valuable. "Their visual spectrum processing is fundamentally different," she explained as Colonel Reed entered her laboratory. "I suspected it when studying Sci-Fi brain tissue, but it's confirmed across all 17 Confederate species." Reed approached the workbench where a Confederate sensor array lay splayed open like a mechanical corpse. "Different how?" "They perceive reality through specific frequency bands," Amara said, activating a holographic display showing comparative visual processing patterns. "But there are gaps, entire sections of the electromagnetic spectrum they simply cannot detect." Her finger traced the jagged valleys in the display. "Perceptual blind spots." Reed's expression remained neutral, but his pulse quickened. "And us. Human perception has its own limitations, but they don't align with theirs." Amara's face lit with fierce intelligence. "We can see what they cannot. And with the right technology, we can exist in their blind spots. Across the facility, in what had once been rival nations' laboratories, scientists worked with single-minded purpose. Chinese quantum engineers collaborated with American weapons specialists. Russian stealth technology experts shared breakthroughs with Indian systems architects. 5 years of careful theft, analysis, and reverse engineering had yielded results. The first prototype of Ghost Tech resembled an ordinary communications device, indistinguishable from standard human technology. But when activated, it operated on frequencies imperceptible to Confederate sensors while remaining perfectly functional for human users. "They'll never detect it," Amara said, demonstrating how the device registered as inert matter on Confederate scanning equipment. "We can communicate right under their mandibles." In his secure office, Reed received reports from around the globe. On the surface, humanity appeared broken. Compliant workers in Confederate mines, obedient subjects of alien rule. Ambassador Chen continued her futile diplomatic missions, each failure providing cover for their true activities. "The sleeper agents are in position," reported General Santos, the Brazilian military leader whose family had died in the Rio massacre. 12% of human laborers in Confederate installations now carry Ghost Tech implants. They're invisible to security scans. Reed studied the deployment map. "And the secondary objective?" "Proceeding according to schedule," Santos replied. "Every Confederate ship that lands for maintenance leads with microscopic monitoring devices embedded in their hulls. We're building a complete map of their military installations, communication networks, and defense systems." Outside the facility, snow fell on the Himalayan peaks. Down in New Delhi, Confederate overseers directed human workers to load rare minerals onto transport ships, never noticing the subtle modifications made to their equipment during routine maintenance. In her Spartan quarters, Amara uploaded her latest breakthrough, a personal perception filter that could render a human invisible to Confederate sensory systems. The test subject, a former Special Forces operative, had walked undetected through a Confederate security checkpoint. "We don't need to match their firepower," Reed told his assembled team that evening. "We just need to become the ghosts they never see coming." Dawn broke over the Amazon basin as the Sifetoll extraction fleet descended through the cloud cover. 7 massive harvester ships, each the size of a pre-Confederation aircraft carrier, hovered above the lush canopy. Their arrival had been announced weeks ago, the largest resource extraction operation in Earth's history. Commander Tizrek of the lead vessel frowned at his control panel. Something was interfering with the ship's positioning systems. A minor malfunction, nothing more. "Begin deployment sequence," he ordered. "The ceremony with the human representatives begins in 30 minutes." Below, a delegation of cooperative human officials waited on a landing platform, Ambassador Chen among them. Her carefully neutral expression revealed nothing of what she knew was about to happen. "Deployment systems failing to respond," reported a subordinate. "Engineering reports unusual activity in the ship's neural network." Tizrek slammed a clawed appendage against his console. "Override and proceed manually." Across all 7 ships, similar malfunctions cascaded through critical systems. Extraction arms failed to extend. Navigation computers displayed conflicting coordinates. Communication arrays captured only static. At the heart of each vessel, invisible to Confederate sensors, microscopic machines, derived from Confederate technology, but operating in their perceptual blind spots, executed precisely timed commands. 12 minutes later, when the first security teams investigated the bridge of the lead ship, they found something unprecedented. The entire command crew sat at their stations, alive and uninjured, but with no memory of the past hour. Medical scans showed no anomalies. Security footage revealed nothing unusual, then simply stopped for exactly 7 minutes before resuming. Ambassador Chen stood on the platform, watching Confederate security forces scurry between ships in growing confusion. She activated her Ghost Tech communicator. "Reed, confirmation requested." Colonel Reed's voice came through clearly, undetectable by any Confederate surveillance. "Operation Blackout successful. All 7 vessels neutralized. Their data cores have been copied and wiped clean. No casualties. Across the galaxy, similar incidents unfolded with perfect synchronization. On the Confederate military hub at Proxima Station, life support systems mysteriously cycled off and on in specific sequences. In the shipyards orbiting Tau Ceti, automated defense platforms targeted phantom signals for 3 minutes before resetting. The Confederate flagship Dominant Will, pride of their naval forces, found its weapon systems suddenly recalibrated to fire at 1/10 power. Engineering crews found no explanation despite exhaustive diagnostics. None of these incidents were linked to humans. None showed evidence of external tampering or cyber attacks, and in each case, affected systems returned to normal operation within hours, leaving only confusion and growing paranoia. 3 days later, Ambassador Chen stood before the Confederate Security Council, her face a mask of diplomatic concern. Earth is troubled by these technical malfunctions, she stated with perfect composure. As a loyal member of the Confederacy, we offer our full cooperation in your investigation. The Tiftal High Commander glared at her. Your primitive species could not possibly understand these systems, let alone affect them. Of course, Chen replied with a slight bow. We are merely concerned. Perhaps the Confederacy might consider temporarily suspending the new extraction operations while these incidents are investigated. In his underground command center, Reed watched the exchange through Chen's hidden camera. Around him, the architects of humanity's invisible resistance coordinated the next phase of operations. They have no idea, Dr. Okafor said, reviewing data from their infiltration of Confederate networks. Their perceptual limitations make them literally unable to see what we're doing. Reed nodded, and that's exactly why we'll win. The Confederacy's highest military council convened an emergency session for the 5th time in as many weeks. The circular chamber on the capital world of Meridian Prime buzzed with accusation and paranoia as representatives from 17 species faced each other across the gleaming table. The Krell are behind these attacks, declared the Tiftal High Commander, compound eyes fixed on the insectoid delegation. Your mining operations have mysteriously avoided all incidents. Baseless accusations, the Krell ambassador chittered. Our analysis suggests Vrexian involvement. Their quantum technology. Enough. The Grand Arbiter, a massive gelatinous being, pulsed with agitation. 6 months of investigation has yielded nothing. Our finest security experts can find no evidence of who is responsible for the sabotage. Holographic displays showed the latest incidents. A military corvette found drifting in deep space, its crew unconscious. A communications hub transmitting gibberish for 14 hours. Defense platforms around 3 core worlds firing at empty space. No Confederate world claimed responsibility. No rebel faction took credit. The phantoms struck and vanished without a trace. None suspected the truth. 10 kilometers beneath Mount Kilimanjaro, Elena Chen and Marcus Reed stood before a 3-dimensional tactical display in Phantom Command. The expanded facility now housed over 3,000 personnel. Earth's finest minds united in invisible resistance. The Confederacy is eating itself alive, Reed observed, watching real-time feeds from their ghost tech surveillance network embedded throughout Confederate space. The Tiftal have withdrawn diplomatic relations with 3 other species. And our ghost fleet? Elena asked. Reed gestured, and the display shifted to show 12 sleek vessels, unlike anything in the Confederate registry. Dr. Okafor's team has perfected the perception filters. These ships literally cannot be seen by Confederate sensors. The vessels incorporated stolen wormhole technology, allowing them to appear anywhere in Confederate space without traversing the distance between. Each carried weapons specifically designed to target Confederate vulnerabilities, while remaining undetectable to their defensive systems. The mining outpost on Cygnus II is our next target, Reed said. Their security protocols have been compromised. Our team will extract the specialized equipment we need for Phase 3. Elena's face showed the transformation of the past 3 years, from desperate diplomat to architect of the Phantom Resistance. And casualties. 0. As always, Reed confirmed. That's our advantage. They kill without hesitation. We infiltrate, sabotage, and disappear. No lives lost means no martyrs, no evidence of attack. On the tactical display, a Confederate battlecruiser patrolling Earth's solar system reported yet another sensor anomaly. The fifth that day. Its captain, increasingly paranoid, ordered random weapons fire into empty space. They're beginning to suspect humans, Elena noted, reviewing intelligence reports from their embedded agents. Reed nodded. But suspicion isn't proof. Every investigation team sent to Earth finds only what we want them to see, a compliant, primitive species struggling under Confederate rule. Dr. Okafor entered the command center, her expression triumphant. The quantum encrypted backdoors are fully operational. We can now access 93% of Confederate systems without detection. Elena studied the display showing Confederate worlds in disarray. Trade disrupted. Military forces scattered in futile pursuit of ghosts. How much longer until we're ready for the reveal? 3 more months, Reed answered. Then we show them exactly who they've been underestimating. Outside the hidden facility, a Confederate inspection team toured a nearby human settlement, finding nothing but simple workers living in apparent subjugation, never noticing the advanced technology hidden in their perceptual blind spots. Grand Arbiter Vex Morda of the Confederate Council awoke to find a human sitting at the foot of his regeneration pool, in his private chambers, inside the most secure building on Meridian Prime. Impossible, the Grand Arbiter gurgled, bioluminescent patterns flashing in alarm across his gelatinous form. Ambassador Elena Chen smiled politely. If it were impossible, I wouldn't be here. Across the Confederate capital, identical scenes unfolded simultaneously. Colonel Reed materialized in the Siftal High Command's war room. Dr. Okafor appeared inside the supposedly impenetrable Confederate archives. 12 human operatives emerged from perceptual blind spots within the private sanctums of the Confederacy's most powerful leaders. Defensive systems remained silent. Guards saw nothing. Sensors detected no intrusion. The council convenes in 30 minutes. Chen informed the Grand Arbiter. We've taken the liberty of adding a special session to the agenda. In the Grand Assembly Hall, the leaders of 17 species found themselves facing unexpected human visitors. Panic gave way to outrage as security forces rushed in, only to find their weapons mysteriously non-functional. Elena Chen stood at the central podium, her diplomatic uniform replaced by the sleek charcoal command attire of Project Phantom. For 5 years, we pleaded for fair treatment, she began, her voice carrying across the suddenly silent chamber. For 5 years, you dismissed us as primitive, irrelevant supplicants. The main display activated, showing a real-time tactical map of Confederate space. 17 critical military installations were highlighted, each showing the same status. CYSTM's Lockheed. 2 years ago, we stopped pleading and started acting. Chen continued. Every unexplained incident, every system failure, every phantom encounter, that was humanity. Reed stepped forward, activating his own display. It showed the Ghost Fleet, now numbering 37 vessels, in position around every Confederate homeworld. Your defensive systems are currently under our control, he stated flatly. Your military communications have been rerouted through our networks. Your weapons platforms will fire only with our authorization. The Siftal High Commander lunged toward a concealed emergency terminal. His clawed appendage passed through it as though it weren't there. That's not actually there, Chen explained. It's a projection we've allowed you to see. The real terminal was removed 3 months ago. Dr. Okafor approached the central table, placing a small device at its center. It projected a holographic archive of thousands of Confederate communications. Every conversation planning Earth's exploitation, she said. Every decision to treat us as disposable labor. Every dismissal of our diplomatic efforts. We've been listening from the beginning. Disbelief gave way to a new emotion on the faces of the Confederate leadership. Fear, You should know, Chen added, that we could have destroyed your civilization at any time during the past year. We chose not to. The Grand Arbiter's translator struggled to convey his stunned response. What do you want? Chen's expression remained impassive. What we always wanted. To negotiate, as equals. Reed's communicator chimed softly. He checked it and nodded to Chen. To demonstrate the seriousness of our position, Chen announced, please direct your attention to your orbital defense platforms. Across 17 worlds, Confederate defensive systems simultaneously deactivated, then reactivated with new targeting parameters, each now aimed at their own government centers. Now, Chen said, her voice carrying the weight of humanity's collective resolve, shall we begin real negotiations? The emergency summit convened in neutral space, a massive station hastily repurposed for the unprecedented negotiations between humanity and the Confederacy. The Confederate delegation arrived in ships stripped of weapons, as specified in Chen's non-negotiable terms. Belina Chen sat across from the Grand Arbiter, the polarities now reversed. Where once she had been the supplicant, now she dictated terms. Colonel Reed stood at her side, while Dr. Okafor managed a series of displays showing the extent of human infiltration throughout Confederate space. This is impossible, the Krell representative insisted, mandibles clicking in agitation. Your species lacks the technological foundation for such capabilities. That was your first mistake, Okafor replied, activating a holographic demonstration. It showed the perceptual spectrum of each Confederate species compared to humans. Your evolutionary paths gave you each specific advantages, but also specific blind spots. Humans can perceive and operate within frequencies that are invisible to your sensory systems. The display shifted to show the ghost tech that had enabled humanity's phantom war. The Confederate scientists present visibly recoiled at the elegant simplicity of the human solution. We studied each of your species exhaustively, Reed explained. While you were busy extracting our planet's resources, we were learning everything about you, your biology, your technology, your weaknesses. Chen activated another recording. Confederate military commanders planning the forcible relocation of human populations from resource-rich areas. The timestamp showed it was from 3 days ago. Even now, some of you were planning our subjugation, she observed coldly. In deep space, beyond the Orc cloud of humanity's solar system, a Confederate battle group slipped its moorings. The rogue commander had refused to accept the new reality, launching a last desperate strike against Earth. 7 battlecruisers, the pride of the Confederate fleet, accelerated toward the Sol system. Inside the conference room, alarm sounded. The Xiftal High Commander's translator struggled to convey his outrage. This action is unauthorized. We agreed to these talks in good faith. Reed merely raised an eyebrow and activated his communicator. Execute Contingency Epsilon. The tactical display showed the approaching Confederate fleet. Suddenly, their engines flared and died. Weapon systems cycled through random activation sequences before shutting down completely. Life support remained functional, nothing more. 2 years ago, we installed countermeasures in every Confederate vessel that entered Earth's orbit, Reed explained. Dead man switches, undetectable to your engineers. Okafor stepped forward, displaying the specifications of weapons humanity had developed but never deployed, each designed specifically for the biological vulnerabilities of Confederate species. For the Xiftal, a frequency that disrupts your neural pathways, she explained clinically. For the Krell, a compound that dissolves your exoskeletons. For the Meridians, a virus that corrupts your collective consciousness. The Confederate representatives stared in horror at weapons that could have been deployed at any time. We could have exterminated your species, Chen said quietly. Instead, we chose this path. The Grand Arbiter's bioluminescence pulsed in complex patterns as he communicated with his advisors. Finally, he addressed Chen directly. The Confederacy acknowledges humanity's unexpected capabilities. We are prepared to discuss new terms. Chen's expression remained impassive. The Confederacy, as you know it, is over. We're not here to join your existing power structure. We're here to fundamentally transform it." The Confederate leaders looked at each other, the terrible realization dawning that the humans they had dismissed as primitive supplicants now held their civilization's fate in their hands. "The reckoning has arrived," Chen declared. "And you will find humans are remarkably different negotiators when we are feared rather than ignored." 1 year after the emergency summit, the formal dissolution of the Galactic Confederacy was ratified by all 17 former member species. In its place rose the Interstellar Alliance, a fundamentally different construct built on principles of mutual defense, equitable resource sharing, and technological cooperation. The signing ceremony took place on Earth, a symbolic choice that escaped no one's attention. The gleaming new Alliance headquarters in Narration stood as a testament to humanity's emergence from subjugation to founding member. Elena Chen, now bearing the title of High Commissioner, stood before the assembled dignitaries. The chamber held representatives from across the galaxy, their postures noticeably different from the dismissive stance they had once taken toward humans. "The Alliance Charter guarantees the sovereignty of all member worlds," she declared, her voice carrying the authority earned through years of struggle. "No species may extract resources from another without equitable exchange. No technology shall be withheld if it benefits the collective good. No voice shall be silenced in matters of galactic governance." The Eiffel delegation, now led by a moderate reformer, signed without hesitation. One by one, former Confederate powers added their marks to the document. Some did so grudgingly, others with newfound respect. In orbit above Earth, Colonel Reed, now Admiral Reed, supervised the Alliance Defense Force from the flagship Phantom. The mixed species crew represented a revolutionary change. Where once aliens had commanded humans, now they served together under joint leadership. The perception filter technology is being integrated into all Alliance vessels, his Krell executive officer reported. The Meridians have contributed their gravitational field manipulation systems to complement it. Reed nodded, watching the tactical display showing the location of former Confederate warlords who had rejected the Alliance. Their movements were tracked by ghost tech sensors they still couldn't detect. "And the backdoor access to their systems?" Reed asked. "Maintained, as you ordered," the officer replied. "Trust, but verify." As the signing ceremony concluded, a young Sci-Fi diplomat approached Chen in the reception hall. Unlike the towering warriors of their species, this one was a scholar, their iridescent exoskeleton more subdued. "High Commissioner," they began hesitantly, "my studies of recent history leave me with a question that disturbs my sleep cycles." Chen raised an eyebrow. "Ask it. How did humanity accomplish what no other subjugated species ever could? The Confederacy dominated for 12,000 years. Others tried resistance. All failed." Chen considered the young diplomat carefully before responding. "You mistook patience for weakness and adaptability for submission. We studied everything about you while you learned nothing about us." She gestured toward the treaty document. "Remember this. Humans don't need to be the strongest species in the galaxy, just the one you fear crossing." As the diplomat departed, visibly unsettled, they noticed for the first time subtle distortions in the air around certain areas of the reception hall. Focusing harder, they'd briefly glimpsed the outline of human observers that had always been present but invisible to alien perception. A chilling reminder that humanity's vigilance never truly ends. In the command center beneath the Himalayas, now expanded into Earth's primary defense coordination facility, Dr. Okafor supervised the next generation of ghost tech. On her screens, data flowed from human operatives embedded throughout Alliance space. "Peace through paranoia?" Reed asked, joining her at the console. Okafor smiled faintly. "Peace through preparedness. The galaxy now knows that humans are watching. Always watching. And what happens when they stop being afraid?" Reed wondered. Chen's voice came from behind them. "Then we remind them why they started."